Why do we love the trio of Luffy, Law, and Kid? I mean, think about it. There's nothing special about a rubber man, a metal man, and, well, a sexy man, I guess? We've been in love with these three ever since STAMPEDE, but back then they were only together for a brief moment. Sure, Luffy has a history with Law now, and he trained together with Kid, but there isn't much history between all three of them. So then why do One Piece fans get so excited whenever these three are together? In this discussion, I'm gonna explain how their unique personalities and mutual respect for each other create an amazing dynamic between Luffy, Law, and Kid. I also invited Axel from AxelBeats to talk about the personality of Law. Be warned that this video does contain spoilers for anime-only fans. Before I get started, make sure to comment with your thoughts on the dynamic between these three. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week in the next discussion. This week's comment comes from Tyler Doe, who pointed out the criminal lack of X-Drake in recent chapters. If you'd like more One Piece discussions like this every week, then make sure to subscribe so you can follow along with each week's video. With that out of the way, let's look at how the personalities of these three balance each other out. We already know our captain is a bit of a meathead. He says whatever he wants, and he does whatever he wants. Luffy doesn't exactly plan things out, he just sort of goes for it. Sure, he gets the occasional good idea, but for the most part, Luffy hands over all the boring R&D type stuff to his friends. And speaking of friends, that's the best part about Luffy. We all know the quote from Mihawk. Luffy's best tool is his ability to make friends no matter where he goes. And he's able to do this because of his unique authenticity. No matter where he goes or what he does, Luffy is always true to himself. He never compromises his values even when the entire world might be against him. This kind of authenticity is very refreshing to people who are used to biting their lip, and so those people are naturally drawn to someone like Luffy, who never stops fighting for what he cares about. Unfortunately, our friend Eustass Kid wasn't exactly blessed in the friend-making department. We all have that friend. You love him, he's your boy, but you can never take him anywhere. He's always just making trouble. Well, that's pretty much Kid in a nutshell. He's always just picking fights no matter where he goes. To be fair though, the first time we see him is when he fights a Pooh, and there is not a single person who wouldn't punch a Pooh square in the nose. But ever since then, Kid's always been sort of a troublemaker. This isn't to say Kid can't be a good guy, he just has a certain proclivity for pain and torment. But with those two meatheads out of the way, here's Axel to talk about everyone's favorite surgeon of death, Trafalgar Law.
Hey Ouji, thanks for having me on. The trio are all super unique, like you mentioned, and while Luffy is outgoing and free-spirited, and Kid is a goddamn savage who does whatever he wants, Law is very different. Having grown up in a village plagued by, well, a plague, Law had to watch his parents and everyone around him die. He was forced to follow Dofi as a means for survival, and eventually is forced to eat the Ape Ape no Mi by Rocinante. If Luffy's adventure is one for freedom and Kid's is one for relative anarchy, then Law's is a journey of necessity. Law never really gets to make his own decisions, and was only really forced to do things when he was younger. Something which definitely leans into him having a more reserved and thoughtful personality. He was never really given any opportunity to rush in headfirst like Kid or Luffy, and as a result he always had to think things through or he would have died a long time ago. The growth in his character is seen when he begins to actually act on his own. He's tired of taking orders from Dofi, sets out to sea, becomes a supernova, and eventually makes a plan to take down both Doflamingo and Kaido, essentially working for his own freedom in a way much different to how Luffy is. But that's not the only way that these three differ. Law isn't really one to get excited like Luffy or rush into things without thinking like Kid, and his greatest weaknesses are probably overthinking things and not having confidence in himself, which is the exact opposite of how Luffy and Kid function. Luffy never overthinks things and rarely thinks things through at all, and Kid is way too confident in himself, even challenging Shanks and then Kaido after he couldn't beat Shanks. However, when the three of them actually do join forces, you essentially have a perfect team. You have a strategist in Law, brute force in Kid, and charisma in Luffy. And while they perfectly balance each other, they also act in contrast, showing us three entirely different perspectives on freedom. Luffy wanting to never be restricted, Kid wanting to do whatever he wants, and Law wanting to create his own path that isn't just the outcome of his circumstances for once.
Thanks, Axel, for coming on to talk about Law. Make sure to visit Axel's channel where he has his own videos on One Piece and other great anime. As you can see, Luffy, Law, and Kid are very different. So then why do they work so well together? Well, these differences actually work to create amazing dynamics between the characters. The best example of this is between Luffy and Law. Whereas Law approaches things logically, Luffy approaches things, well, not so logically. Naturally, this creates a great dynamic where Law is constantly explaining things to Luffy, and Luffy ignores Law and just does whatever he wants. For example, there's the time when Law tries to explain that they need a plan to beat Doflamingo. This of course falls on deaf ears, as Luffy completely ignores Law and starts talking about food. But there's also the rare occasion where this dynamic actually works in Law's favor. When he shows Luffy the Kozuki graves, Law just flat out states these are their graves, as a matter of fact, which leads the gullible Luffy into believing that they're now ghosts. Now, as great as the Luffy and Law dynamic is, there's also a great dynamic between Luffy and Kid. Like I said earlier, these two are big old meatheads. There is an important difference between these two, but I'll say more on that later in the video. For the most part, these two actually have more in common, with the only real difference being their general attitudes. Luffy is obviously very friendly, while Kid will beat you senseless if you even look at him the wrong way. A great example of this is when Caribou tries to get Luffy to team up with him. Luffy is clearly annoyed, but he just tells Caribou to leave him alone and focuses on his training. But then when Kid hears Caribou spreading rumors, he hurls a pickaxe towards his head and intimidates him. Here, Luffy tried to avoid Caribou, whereas Kid was practically begging him to swing first. But this doesn't mean this dynamic doesn't work the other way around. In the very beginning of the raid, Luffy immediately finds trouble by using an elephant gun on one of Kaido's grunts. This baffles Kid, who knows that picking a fight this early on would only screw up the plans. Then Zoro does the exact same thing, and Kid and Killer begin to understand just how ridiculous Luffy and Zoro really are. And this is exactly why their unique personalities make this trio so iconic. You have Law talking to a brick wall, Luffy ignoring the reasonable thing to do, and Kid looking for any excuse to put someone in the ground. But like I mentioned earlier, this is only one reason why the trio works so well. The best aspect of the trio is their mutual respect for each other. As captains, Luffy, Law, and Kid compete all the time, but this is only because they respect each other so much. Because of this mutual respect, the three characters challenge each other to go beyond their limits. Looking at Luffy, it's obvious that he respects Law and Kid. As we know, he has plenty of reasons to respect Law. Law saved Luffy in Marineford, put together the plan to kill Kaido, and he stood up for himself against Doflamingo. So even if he doesn't always listen to him, Luffy fights for Law like he would any of his crewmates. And Law has known for a while now that there's something about Luffy that makes him special. Law heard Luffy casually declare that he'd find the One Piece and got a taste of his ambition. He saw what Luffy did at Marineford and knew he was a beast. Law had always restricted himself to what was reasonable. Make a plan and stick to it. But as he got to know Luffy and learn how his resolve makes him unstoppable, Law became inspired to do the same. To trust in Luffy's ambition, to spit in Doflamingo's face and tell him he's a joke compared to Luffy. So while Law's ambition inspires Luffy to fight alongside him, Luffy's resolve inspires Law to spit in the face of certain death and take a chance on what might very well seem absurd. And then we come to Luffy and Kid. Again, like with Law, Luffy respects Kid because of his strong resolve. As the two of them compete together in Udon, they push each other to get stronger and stronger. Kid's resolve to beat Kaido inspires Luffy to go beyond his limits and beat Kid to the punch. And while Luffy does the same for Kid, there's something much more important about their relationship. Kid fights for his dreams like Luffy. He fights to defend his crew like Luffy. So why doesn't Kid inspire people the same way Luffy does? Kid gets the answer to this question when he sees Luffy fight for the prisoners of Udon. Raizo throws Kid the keys so that he can escape, but instead he takes the opportunity to just observe Luffy. Kid, who just wanted to escape and grab his friends, sits there wondering why Luffy bothers to fight for everyone in Udon. Then we see Luffy literally take on their burden to show them that they don't have to be slaves to Kaido anymore. Luffy goes out of his way to inspire the prisoners to finally fight for their own freedom. This is the crucial difference between Luffy and Kid. Kid has no interest in the freedom of others. His only concern is taking care of his crew and finding the One Piece. Luffy, on the other hand, wants to free everyone around him. He sees the injustice in Wano and goes out of his way to fight for a better future. In a way, he does the same for Kid. Kid was all done with teams and alliances. He was all set trying to help others just to have it bite him later. But he sees how Luffy fights for others and learns that it doesn't always have to be a solo struggle. So while Kid inspires Luffy to go beyond his limits, Luffy inspires Kid to have more faith in people and to fight for the freedom of others just as much as his own. This is why we love seeing Luffy, Law, and Kid together. While their unique personalities create amazing dynamics, their mutual respect inspires each of them to challenge each other and overcome their weaknesses. And that's it for this discussion. Another big thank you to Axel for sharing his thoughts in this week's video. If you enjoyed this discussion, then make sure to like the video. If you'd like more discussions like this one, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can follow along with weekly videos. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.